Michael Jackson is standing in his dressing room at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City, 20 minutes before showtime, when he walks to the window and looks down at the crowd gathering outside. That's when he sees them. 15 children pressed against the security fence, crying, holding homemade signs, clearly desperate to get inside. Security is pushing them back, and Michael watches one small boy collapse to his knees sobbing. Michael turns to his tour manager and says 5 words that will change everything: "Bring those children to me." But nobody knows yet why these children are outside, why they're crying, or what secret they're carrying that will break 40,000 hearts. It was October 29, 1993, at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City during Michael Jackson's Dangerous World Tour. The stadium was packed with 40,000 fans who'd paid for tickets, waited for months, and were now minutes away from seeing the biggest star on the planet. But outside the stadium, pressed against a security fence where they could hear the crowd but couldn't see anything, stood 15 children between the ages of 8 and 14. They were from Casa Hogar Luz de Esperanza, a children's home in one of Mexico City's poorest neighborhoods. And they were crying because they'd been promised something that had just been stolen from them. 3 months earlier, a local charity organization had contacted Casa Hogar with an incredible offer. Anonymous donors had purchased 15 tickets to Michael Jackson's concert specifically for the children at the home. Front row seats. Transportation provided. A chance for kids who'd been abandoned, abused, or orphaned to experience something magical. The children had been told about this gift, had counted down the days, had practiced Michael's dance moves in the courtyard, had made signs and outfits from donated materials. For 3 months, these children who had nothing had something to dream about. But 2 days before the concert, the charity organization had called with devastating news. The tickets had been fake. Someone had scammed them, taken their money, and left them with worthless pieces of paper. There were no real tickets. No front row seats. No transportation. Nothing. The staff at Casa Hogar had tried to hide this from the children, tried to find a solution, but there was no time and no money. When the children had woken up that morning asking if today was the day, the staff had to tell them the truth. There is no concert. The tickets were fake. We're so sorry. But the children, led by a 13-year-old boy named Miguel who'd lived at Casa Hogar since he was 6, had made a different decision. They took the fake tickets, pooled the little bit of money some of them had from small jobs, and took 3 buses across Mexico City to Estadio Azteca. They knew they couldn't get in. They knew the tickets were worthless. But they needed to be close. To hear the music. To feel like they were part of something instead of forgotten children nobody cared about. So they stood outside the fence, holding their fake tickets and homemade signs, crying because they were so close but might as well have been on another planet. Michael Jackson stood at his dressing room window watching these children, and something in their body language, their desperate tears, the way security was pushing them away like they were trash, made his chest tighten with rage and sadness. "Frank," he said to his tour manager Frank Dilio. "Those children outside. Go find out who they are and why they're crying. And bring them to me. Now." Frank started to protest about the timing, about the 40,000 people waiting, but Michael's expression stopped him. "Now, Frank. We don't start until I understand what's happening." Frank sent security to gather information, and 10 minutes later, he returned with a staff member from Casa Hogar who'd accompanied the children. Her name was Rosa Martinez, she was 62 years old, and she'd worked at the children's home for 30 years. She stood in Michael's dressing room twisting her hands nervously while she explained through a translator. The fake tickets. The months of anticipation. The devastating discovery. The children's decision to come anyway just to be close. Rosa was crying as she spoke. "I'm so sorry we came, Senor Jackson. I know it's inappropriate. But these children, they have so little. This dream was all they had, and I couldn't tell them they couldn't at least try." Michael listened to the entire story, his face growing darker with each detail. When Rosa finished, Michael was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Frank. Cancel the opening act. We're starting 45 minutes late. Frank's eyes went wide. Michael, we can't just, but Michael cut him off. We can and we will. I'm not performing until those children are inside the stadium with the best seats we can give them. And Frank, I want to know who scammed that charity. I want names. I want that person found. Nobody steals from orphans and gets away with it. Within minutes, Michael's team was executing a plan nobody had prepared for. The 15 children from Casa Hogar were brought inside through a back entrance, past security, past the VIP areas, all the way to the stage itself. They were given seats in the front row, center stage, the most expensive and exclusive seats in the entire venue. Miguel, the 13-year-old who'd led them here, stood frozen in shock as they were escorted to these impossible seats. Señor, Miguel said in broken English to the security guard guiding them. I think there is mistake. These are not our seats. We have no seats. We have fake tickets. The security guard smiled. No mistake, kid. These are your seats now. Compliments of Michael Jackson. The 15 children sat down in stunned silence, unable to process what was happening. Around them, people in expensive clothes who'd paid thousands of pesos for these seats stared at these poor children in donated clothes holding homemade signs. Some looked annoyed that kids from the streets were in premium seats. But they didn't know yet what was about to happen. They didn't know that Michael Jackson was about to turn his concert into something none of them would ever forget. The lights went down 45 minutes late, and the crowd who'd been growing impatient suddenly didn't care about the delay. Michael Jackson appeared on stage in full costume, and 40,000 people erupted in screams. But instead of launching into his opening number, Michael walked to the front of the stage and held up his hand for silence. Before we begin tonight, Michael said into his microphone, his voice carrying through the massive stadium, I need to tell you a story. About 15 children who are sitting right here in the front row. Michael pointed to where the children from Casa Hogar sat, their faces visible on the massive screens throughout the stadium. 3 months ago, these children from Casa Hogar Luz de Esperanza, an orphanage here in Mexico City, were given a gift. Anonymous donors bought them tickets to tonight's show. Front row seats. For 3 months, these kids who have nothing, who've been abandoned or abused or orphaned, had something to dream about. They practiced my dance moves. They made signs. They counted down the days. The stadium was completely silent now, 40,000 people listening. 2 days ago, Michael continued, his voice hardening with anger, these children learned that the tickets were fake. Someone scammed the charity. Took their money. Left these kids with worthless paper. This morning, they were told there was no concert. No dream. Just disappointment. Michael's voice grew softer but more intense. But these 15 children decided to come anyway. They pooled their money, took 3 buses across the city, and stood outside the stadium. They knew they couldn't get in. They just wanted to be close. To hear the music. To feel like they mattered. I saw them from my window, crying, being pushed away by security. And I realized something. Those children are why I do this. Not for the people who can afford expensive tickets. For the kids who have nothing but hope. For the children who've been forgotten by everyone else. Michael turned back to the 15 children in the front row. Miguel, Marco, Sofia, Carmen, Luis, and the others. Tonight's concert is dedicated to you. Not just dedicated. This is your concert. You're not guests. You're the reason we're here. And I want everyone in this stadium to understand something. These children have more right to be here than anyone else, because they fought to be here. They refused to give up even when their dream was stolen. The stadium erupted, but not in the usual screaming excitement. It was different. Supportive. Emotional. 40,000 people understanding they were about to witness something extraordinary. But what Michael Jackson did next shocked everyone. He walked off the stage, down the stairs, and sat down on the floor directly in front of where the 15 children sat. He gestured for them to come closer. "Come here," he said. "All of you. Come sit with me." The children, terrified and overwhelmed, climbed over the barrier and sat on the floor around Michael Jackson. He was surrounded by 15 poor children in donated clothes holding handmade signs, and he smiled at them with genuine warmth. "What's your favorite song?" he asked Miguel, who seemed to be the group's leader. Miguel's voice shook as he answered. "Heal the World, Senor Jackson. Because it's about making things better for children like us." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Then we're starting with that one. And I want all of you to sing it with me. Not from your seats. Up here. On stage. With me." The children stared at him in disbelief. "On stage?" Sophia, a 10-year-old girl, whispered. "We can come on stage?" Michael stood up and held out his hands to help the children to their feet. "You're not just coming on stage. You're performing with me. This is your concert, remember? You're not watching. You're part of the show." What followed was the most unconventional opening to any concert in Michael Jackson's career. 15 children from Casa Hogar stood on stage with him, and together they performed Heal the World. The children didn't know the choreography, didn't hit the notes perfectly, some were crying too hard to sing at all. But they stood there with Michael Jackson in front of 40,000 people, and they sang about making the world better for children. Michael moved among them as they sang, putting his arm around shoulders, wiping tears, encouraging them, making them feel like they belonged on that stage. The 40,000 people in Estadio Azteca watched something they'd never expected to see. Not a polished performance, but something raw and real and profoundly moving. These weren't backup dancers or featured guests. These were abandoned children being told they mattered. Being shown that their stolen dream could be reclaimed. Being given the message that people who have nothing are worth just as much as people who have everything. When the song ended, Michael didn't send the children back to their seats. He brought chairs onto the stage and positioned them in a semicircle where the children could sit and watch the entire concert from on stage. "You're staying up here," he told them. "You're part of this show now. Every song I sing tonight, I'm singing for you." Michael performed his entire set list with 15 children sitting on stage behind him. During the upbeat numbers, he'd turn and dance for them, making them laugh. During the ballads, he'd sit with them and talk between verses. He asked about their lives, their dreams, their hopes. He learned that Miguel wanted to be a teacher. That Sophia wanted to be a doctor. That little Marco, only 8 years old, wanted to be a singer like Michael. And Michael made promises. He promised to help fund their educations. He promised to stay in touch with Casa Hogar. He promised these children that being abandoned didn't mean being worthless. During one particularly powerful moment, Michael invited Miguel to stand beside him at center stage. "Tell everyone your name and where you're from," Michael said, holding the microphone for the boy. Miguel's voice shook but he spoke clearly. "My name is Miguel Hernandez. I'm 13 years old. I live at Casa Hogar Luz de Esperanza because my parents left me when I was 6. Michael put his arm around Miguel's shoulders. "And what do you want to be when you grow up?" "A teacher," Miguel said. "So I can help kids like me. Kids who think nobody cares about them. I want to show them that they matter." Michael's voice broke as he responded. "Miguel, you already are a teacher. You taught me something tonight. You taught 40,000 people something tonight. You taught us that dreams are worth fighting for even when they're stolen. That hope is stronger than disappointment. That children who have nothing are worth everything." The stadium erupted in applause, and Miguel stood on that stage crying while 40,000 people celebrated him. Not pitied him. Not felt sorry for him. Celebrated him for his courage and his heart. After the concert, Michael didn't rush to his dressing room. He sat on stage with the 15 children and talked for over an hour. He asked Rosa Martinez to bring him information about every child. Their backgrounds, their needs, their dreams. He took notes. He made plans. He promised things that his team would later scramble to fulfill, but that Michael had no doubt he would fulfill because these children had touched something in him that money and fame had never reached. Before the children left that night, Michael gave each of them something personal. To Miguel, he gave the fedora he'd worn during the performance. To Sofia, he gave one of his sequined gloves. To Marco, he gave a signed photograph with a note that read, "Never stop singing. Your voice matters." To each child, Michael gave something meaningful and a personal message. And he gave Rosa Martinez an envelope with instructions not to open it until she returned to Casa Hogar. When Rosa opened the envelope later that night back at the children's home, she found a check for 500,000 pesos and a letter. "Dear Casa Hogar Luz de Esperanza," the letter read. "The children I met tonight reminded me why I became a performer. Not for fame or money, but to bring joy to people who need it most. Please use this money to improve the home, to fund education for the children, and to ensure that no child feels forgotten. I will be sending monthly support, and I will visit whenever I'm in Mexico. Those 15 children are now part of my family. With love and respect, Michael Jackson." But Michael did something else that nobody knew about for years. He hired a private investigator to find the person who'd scammed the charity and stolen the children's tickets. When the scammer was found, Michael didn't press charges. Instead, he made the person work at Casa Hogar for 1 year without pay, facing the children they'd hurt every day, learning what their greed had cost. The children from Casa Hogar became a permanent part of Michael's life. He visited them whenever he toured Mexico. He funded their educations through university. He stayed in touch through letters and phone calls. He watched Miguel become a teacher, Sofia become a nurse, Marco become a music therapist. He attended their graduations, their weddings, and became the father figure that many of them had never had. When Michael Jackson died in 2009, 15 adults from Mexico City traveled to Los Angeles for his memorial service. They were between the ages of 24 and 30, professionals and parents and productive members of society. They brought with them the items Michael had given them that night in 1993. The fedora, the glove, the photographs, the personal notes. Miguel Hernandez, now 30 years old and a high school teacher in Mexico City, was asked to speak at the memorial. Michael Jackson saved 15 children on October 29, 1993, Miguel said, standing at the podium wearing the fedora Michael had given him 16 years earlier. Not from physical danger, but from something worse. From believing we didn't matter. From thinking that being abandoned meant being worthless. From accepting that people like us don't deserve dreams. Michael saw us crying outside his concert, and he didn't send money or tickets. He brought us inside. He put us on stage. He made 40,000 people watch while he showed us we were valuable. Miguel's voice broke, but he continued. That night changed all of us. Sofia became a nurse because Michael asked about her dreams and made her believe they were possible. Marco became a music therapist because Michael told him his voice mattered. I became a teacher because Michael showed me that the greatest gift you can give is making someone feel seen. We were 15 forgotten children, and Michael refused to forget us. He stayed in our lives, funded our educations, came to our graduations. He was the father most of us never had. The items Miguel and the others brought to the memorial are now displayed together at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles, in an exhibit called The Children Michael Saw. A plaque reads, on October 29, 1993, Michael Jackson saw 15 orphan children crying outside his concert in Mexico City after learning their tickets had been fake. Instead of starting his show, he brought them inside, put them on stage, dedicated the performance to them, and changed their lives forever. These items represent Michael's belief that abandoned children deserve to be fought for, that stolen dreams can be reclaimed, and that the most important audience is always the one that nobody else sees. Miguel Hernandez is 44 years old now, still teaching high school in Mexico City. Every year on October 29th, he gathers with the other 14 who were there that night. They meet at Casa Hogar Luz de Esperanza, which has been renovated and expanded with funds Michael established, and they tell the younger children currently living there about the night their lives changed. About standing outside a concert they couldn't attend. About Michael Jackson looking out a window and refusing to accept their exclusion. About being brought on stage and told they mattered. The lesson of the 15 children is about visibility. About powerful people choosing to see those the world ignores. About understanding that the most important audience isn't the 40,000 who paid for tickets, but the 15 who fought to be close even when they had nothing. Michael Jackson could have started his show on time. Could have sent the children free tickets and felt good about his charity. Instead, he delayed everything, brought them on stage, made them part of the performance, and showed them they weren't objects of pity but people of value. Share this story with someone who feels invisible, forgotten, or convinced they don't matter. Tell us in the comments about a time someone saw you when you felt unseen. Subscribe for more stories proving that greatness is measured not by who celebrates you, but by who you refuse to ignore when everyone else looks away. 15 children stood outside crying because their dream had been stolen. Michael Jackson looked out a window, saw them, and rewrote the entire night. That's not charity. That's recognition. That's love. And that's why those 15 children, now adults with children of their own, still gather every year to honor the man who refused to let them be forgotten.